All right, let's talk about the self-preserving subtype. And the first thing we need to do is just define what self-preserving it is. And the first thing I want you to know is that this is not as simple as self-care. Now, people with a self-preserving dominant instinct are typically pretty good at self-care, but this is much deeper. This is about the instinct to stay alive, stay safe, and be physically comfortable. This is 9 in 9 Enneagram Wisdom for Life. Let's dive in. The person that has a dominant self-preserving instinct has this keen awareness all the time about their physical and material security. So this is going to mean that they value and they pay a lot of attention to, where their next meal is going to be, or planning out, their food for the day, their health, their money, the comfort of their environment and their safety. They desire this physical comfort, physical safety in all of their environments, but even probably most specifically in their home environment. It's very, very important there. So you might be self-preserving dominant if you feel like my life is always being threatened. You might feel like there's a risk and you just have to be constantly aware and planning to avoid it. You might be self-preserving repressed, or it might be your weakest instinct if you have the feeling that my life is actually not that important, and it's probably not that important that I protect or care for myself. And I know that sounds a little harsh, but if that's your repressed instinct, you'll find yourself behaving with some of those actually, I don't really need to eat today. I don't really need to take care of myself. All right, let's run through every number and what it looks like when they have a self-preserving dominant instinct. All right, we're going to start with the heart triad, and we're going to start with number 2, which, remember that the motivation is relational connection and the weakness or the passion is pride. The self-preserving 2 is the counter type of the 2, and this is because that pride mixes in and it becomes this self-entitlement, or like an attitude of, I want you to take care of me rather than me as the 2 taking care of you. And so easily this type of 2 can mistype for a 4 or a 6. They're typically very childlike, playful, charming, but they're the least enthusiastic around helping other people because they want to be special and cared for themselves. For the Enneagram 3, the motivation is going to be achievement and success, and of course, that passion of deceit. Now, the deceit for the Enneagram 3 with self-preserving instinct is going to be that they don't actually notice their true motivation or the vanity that they have. They actually have a vanity around having no vanity. They want to not only look good, but they want to actually be good. And so this is another example of a counter type, and this 3 will often mistype as a 1. This 3 wants to be admired and wants to have respect and admiration of other people, but they don't want the public recognition like the other 3s. For the Enneagram 4, the motivation is to be seen and understood, to be known, and the passion is envy. So when an Enneagram 4 has a self-preserving instinct, they deny the envy that they have, and they tend to be very masochistic, meaning they suffer in silence. So they take all that envy that they don't admit is there, and they work really, really hard to earn or to get what they think everybody else has. And so they earn their way to being worthy, all the while being a little bit in denial about envy, suffering in silence, and being more masochistic than melodramatic. All right, next let's talk about the thinking triad, and we'll start with the 5. The 5's motivation is to be independent and competent, and they're dealing with avarice, which is, or a hoarding style around their sanctuary, around privacy, around having control over their boundaries around their time and energy and the environment that they're in. They want to be very, very independent, and they do that by reducing the amount of need that they have. For the Enneagram 6, the motivation is to experience security, and they're dealing with a lot of fear. Now, the self-preserving 6 is very warm and charming, and they build relationships very easily. They are building alliances and relationships in order to keep themselves safe. And they feel more safe when they can rely on the alliances that they have built. So, this type of 6 is going to ask the most questions of all the 6s. And they also are going to be the least likely to trust themselves over other people. The 7's motivation is to be happy and avoid pain. And of course, they're dealing with the gluttony of excess. So, how this mixes when they have a self-preserving instinct is that this type of 7 becomes very focused on getting what they want. They become very obsessed with putting their own needs above everything else, even if they're doing this unconsciously. So, this 7 is definitely going to use groups that have common interests in order to promote themselves and have their own needs met. This type of 7 actually also has an underdeveloped sense of empathy, and it's simply because that excess is around their need for safety, security, and their personal needs. All right, now before we move to the gut triad, I want to remind you that I do have a masterclass that I have on sale for anybody listening to the podcast. You can go to the show notes and you're going to get a lot of this information all in one place, all the handouts, and a deeper dive, and you can have access to that in the show notes. It's the Instinct and Subtype Masterclass. Let's get to the gut triad, the 8. The 8 is looking to not be controlled, and they have the passion of the lust for intensity. And so this intensity, it becomes around getting what they want and need, because again, their self-preserving instinct is going to kick in. They're going to be very reserved, very guarded. They actually don't need to have power or control in group settings. They simply want to go through the world and making sure that their needs are met, and they're actually often focused on those material and security needs. The Enneagram 9 is motivated to be unaffected through harmonization, and the passion is merging. And so for the 9 with a self-preserving instinct, we're going to find that merging happens with the routines of their life and comfort. So this 9 has the least amount of energy of all the 9s, and they're actually not swayed. They're fine to do their own thing, because the most important thing to them is the routines of comfort that they have built into their life. So they can be very stubborn about making sure that their routines are not jeopardized. The Enneagram 1 has a motivation of reforming and improving the world. And of course, they're dealing with anger, irritated anger. And for the self-preserving 1, this is going to be the most perfectionistic of all of the Enneagram 1s. They actually deal with a lot of worry and anxiety around wanting to control everything. They become very self-critical, and they tend to repress their anger because it isn't the right thing to do. But that anger can kind of come out sideways sometimes in the form of being passive aggressive. Okay, that was a quick run through, but if you feel like self-preservation might be your dominant instinct, then I want to encourage you to maybe be aware that you might be overdoing it. When you have too much focus on your own needs, it can overshadow the goals that you have and the relationships that are in your life. Now, if self-preservation is the weakest instinct in your stack, then I'd like to encourage you to make some time for self-care at least once a week, more if possible. Do you have questions about subtypes and instincts? If you do, just put your question in the comments below, and I'm going to do the entire 5th episode of this series on your questions and how I can help answer them.